Ryan's office revenge. I knew my 22-year career was finished the exact moment that PowerPoint slide appeared on the conference room screen. It wasn't a loud realization. It didn't come with sirens or dramatic music. It arrived like a migraine behind my left eye, the same eye that had been twitching since 6 a.m. when I'd logged in to fix a server crash caused by an offshore team that couldn't tell a load balancer from a surge protector. I'm Howard Pierce, 49 years old, and I've been building enterprise systems since some of these kids were learning to tie their shoes. 22 years at TechFlow Solutions, watching it grow from a scrappy startup into a billion-dollar operation. I thought I'd earned some respect along the way. Turns out, respect doesn't mean much when there's a new sheriff in town. The sheriff's name was Linda Reiser, our freshly minted VP of Innovation. She was broadcasting live from headquarters in San Francisco, while the rest of us Seattle engineers sat in this glass fishbowl conference room, looking like we were about to be fed to sharks. Linda had that polished executive look down pat, perfectly styled blonde hair, crisp white suit, and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Transition quarters are always challenging," Linda said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as slippery. "But challenges are just opportunities in work clothes." I took a sip of my lukewarm coffee and tried to wash down the aspirin I'd dry swallowed 5 minutes earlier. Around me, the Seattle office was holding its collective breath. Dennis, my 26-year-old protege, was chewing his thumbnail like his life depended on it. Patricia, who'd been my partner in crime for the last 8 years, had that 1,000-yard stare going. We all knew something was coming. The rumor mill had been working overtime for weeks. Layoffs, restructuring, strategic realignments. To ensure we meet our Q4 targets, Linda continued, clicking to the next slide with a remote we couldn't see. We're implementing what I call intellectual property consolidation. The slide appeared like a death certificate. Deep blue background, stark white text. Asset Retrieval Initiative. Effective immediately. My stomach dropped into my shoes. Any and all software, algorithms, or digital solutions developed by our team members, regardless of when, where, or how they were created, are now classified as company intellectual property, Linda announced with that corporate shark smile. We need to close the loophole on side projects and hobby coding. If you work for us, your innovations belong to us. We are centralizing our technical assets to survive. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the air conditioning and the terrifying click of Dennis's jaw snapping shut. I blinked slowly, processing what I'd just heard. For the past 3 years, I'd been building something on my own time, on my own equipment, using my own coffee and sacrificing my own weekends. I called it the Phantom Grid System, a network, infrastructure monitoring tool that could predict system failures before they happened. It was my masterpiece, written entirely on my personal setup at home, on my own Wi-Fi, during holidays and late nights when normal people were sleeping. It was the thing that kept me sane when my marriage was falling apart. It was the only thing I truly owned in this world. And Linda had just declared, with that predatory smile, that she was taking it. She didn't know about it specifically, not yet. But she knew that in a room full of engineers, there were dozens of side projects, and she was casting a wide net to harvest our creativity to cover her own incompetence. We expect all code repositories to be uploaded to our central servers by Friday. Linda chirped like she was asking someone to pass the salt. Failure to comply will be treated as theft of company property and violation of your employment agreement. My hands were resting on the cold laminate conference table. They weren't shaking from fear. They were trembling from a sudden, violent clarity. The betrayal was worse than the theft itself. The video feed cut to a generic holding screen with elevator music, a jarring transition from the violence of her announcement. Around me, the Seattle office began to melt down in real time. "She can't do that," Dennis whispered, his voice cracking. "I've got a gaming app I've been working on for 2 years. It has nothing to do with enterprise software." "Legally," I said, my voice sounding strange even to me, detached like I was speaking underwater. "She probably can't." "But she's got lawyers on retainer, and you've got student loans, Dennis. She knows you won't fight." I stood up. The movement felt mechanical, heavy. My ergonomic chair, the same chair I'd been sitting in for 5 years, solving other people's problems, rolled back with a soft whoosh. "Where are you going?" Dennis asked, eyes wide with panic. "The breakout session starts in 10 minutes. I'm going to get a box," I said simply. I walked out of the conference room and down the long gray hallway toward my desk. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a sound I'd tuned out for years but now seemed loud as an emergency broadcast. People were clustered in the corridors, whispering, their faces pale and drawn. The morale of the entire building had been decapitated in under 10 minutes. I reached my cubicle, a corner spot I'd earned through years of putting out fires and meeting impossible deadlines. It was decorated with the artifacts of a long career in the trenches. Efficiency awards, technical certifications, a stack of O'Reilly programming books I'd actually read, and there on my desk was a ceramic mug shaped like a penguin that my daughter Emma had given me for Father's Day 3 years ago, back when she still lived with me and her mother. I picked up the mug. Heavy, solid, real. The one constant in a world that had just shifted underneath my feet. I didn't start screaming. I didn't throw my monitor through the window or storm into Linda's virtual presence to tell her what I thought of her asset retrieval initiative. I just reached under my desk, pulled out a collapsed cardboard box I kept for recycling old equipment manuals, and taped the bottom shut with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this before. Into the box went the penguin mug. Into the box went my mechanical keyboard, the one I'd bought myself because the company-issued ones gave me carpal tunnel after about 6 months of serious coding. Into the box went my personal mouse, a high DPI gaming model that made navigating complex network diagrams actually tolerable. And finally, into the box went 2 leather notebooks that were about to become the most dangerous items in the building. These notebooks contained the handwritten architecture diagrams for the Phantom Grid system. I'd never digitized the core design notes, a paranoid habit born from watching too many colleagues get burned by corporate politics. Every algorithm, every data flow, every security protocol was sketched out in my terrible handwriting across 200 pages of graph paper. Without these notebooks, the compiled code I'd left on the development servers was just an expensive screensaver. "Howard?" I turned. Patricia was standing at the entrance of my cubicle, clutching a tablet against her chest like armor. She looked like someone had just told her the building was on fire. "You're not actually leaving, are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Linda's just posturing. She does this corporate theater thing. It's a power play. If we keep our heads down and wait it out—" "Patricia," I interrupted, my voice steady for the first time all morning. "Look at me." She stopped talking and focused on my face. "Linda isn't posturing. She's harvesting," I said, placing the notebooks gently on top of the keyboard. "She's missed her numbers for 2 quarters running. She needs a miracle product to launch at the Infrastructure Summit next month. She's going to scrape our hard drives, package whatever she finds, and sell it as her revolutionary vision. I'm not going to be part of the harvest." Patricia's eyes went wide. "But what about your pension? Your stock options? If you walk out now, they'll mark you as voluntary resignation. You get nothing, Howard. Nothing." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Patricia had been through 3 rounds of layoffs, 2 reorganizations, and countless broken promises from management. She was 44 years old, with a mortgage and aging parents, and the fear in her eyes was real. But I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time that morning, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone holding 4 aces while watching their opponent bet the deed to their house. "I don't need severance, Patricia," I said softly. "I have insurance." She looked confused. "Insurance? You mean the health coverage that expires at the end of the month?" "No." I tapped the side of the cardboard box. "I mean insurance." She didn't understand. How could she? She didn't know that 8 months ago, sensing which way the corporate winds were blowing, I'd driven to downtown Seattle and spent 4 hours with a patent attorney. She didn't know that sitting in my home safe, next to my divorce papers and my daughter's birth certificate, was a filing receipt from the United States Patent and Trademark Office for the Phantom Grid system, complete with priority dates that predated Linda's employment at TechFlow by a full year. Linda thought she was the apex predator because she had the corner office and the executive parking space. She'd forgotten one crucial detail about predators. They make noise when they hunt, and noise makes them targets. To understand why I was willing to torch a 22-year career over a piece of software, you need to understand what that software really was. The Phantom Grid system wasn't just code. It was the solution to a problem that had kept me awake for years and cost our company millions in downtime. TechFlow, despite its billion-dollar valuation, ran on network infrastructure that was essentially held together with digital duct tape and prayer. Our monitoring systems were reactive, not predictive. When a server cluster went down, we found out about it the same time our customers did, usually through angry phone calls at 3 a.m. Database failures, network bottlenecks, memory leaks that brought entire services to their knees. We were always playing defense, always scrambling to fix problems after they'd already cost us money and reputation. I'd spent 5 years proposing solutions. I wrote detailed white papers, built proof-of-concept prototypes, begged management to let me overhaul our monitoring architecture. Every time I got the same corporate response: "Too expensive, Howard. Too risky. Just patch it and move on." So I stopped asking permission. I started building. I worked from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. for 18 months straight. I missed my daughter's soccer games, skipped family, barbecues, coded through weekend fishing trips that my ex-wife had planned to reconnect as a family. The system became my obsession. A predictive monitoring network that didn't just detect problems, but anticipated them hours or even days before they manifested. The mathematics were elegant. Machine learning algorithms analyzed traffic patterns, resource utilization metrics, and system health indicators to build predictive models of failure states. It could spot the early signs of a cascading database failure, predict when a load balancer was about to hit critical capacity, even identify the subtle patterns that preceded the kind of network congestion that brought down entire services. The code was 47,000 lines of pure mathematical poetry. It was worth millions in prevented downtime, and it was completely, legally, questionably, mine. Then Linda Reiser parachuted into our company 6 months ago. Linda had been recruited from Vanguard Systems, a competitor that had mysteriously imploded shortly after her departure. She was the archetype of the modern corporate executive, all style and no substance, but absolutely lethal in her ambition. She didn't understand code, couldn't architect a network to save her life, but she was a virtuoso at corporate optics and political maneuvering. I remember our first one-on-one meeting. She'd kept me waiting for 15 minutes while she finished a phone call that seemed to consist entirely of buzzwords like synergy and paradigm shift. When she finally acknowledged my presence, she spent the first 3 minutes looking at her phone before focusing on my workstation setup. "Do we really need all this hardware, Howard?" she'd asked, gesturing at my dual monitors and specialized debugging equipment. "It looks cluttered. We're moving toward a clean workspace aesthetic. Perception drives value in the modern enterprise." "This hardware monitors the North American server infrastructure," I'd replied as diplomatically as I could manage. "Right," she'd waved, dismissively. "Well, streamline it. Make it prettier. And Howard? Try to smile more in meetings. You have a very intense demeanor. It can be intimidating to junior staff members." That was Linda in a nutshell. Style over substance, appearance over competence, politics over performance. Now, standing in the parking lot with my cardboard box, watching the Seattle drizzle start to fall on the asphalt, I could see Linda's face in my mind. She was betting everything on this intellectual property grab. She was going to steal the credit for whatever she could harvest from our hard drives, package it up with corporate buzzwords, and present it as her visionary leadership. I unlocked my car, a sensible 4-year-old Honda that Linda would probably call uninspiring, and placed the box carefully in the passenger seat. Then I pulled out my phone. One notification, a company-wide email from Linda, sent just 3 minutes ago. Subject: securing our innovation pipeline team. To facilitate our asset consolidation initiative, all external storage access on company laptops has been disabled effective immediately. Please upload your local development files to our central repository system by 5 p.m. today. Our IT security team will be performing automated compliance sweeps this evening to ensure full participation. She was moving faster than I'd expected. Much faster. She was trying to lock all the doors while we were still inside the building, probably hoping to catch people with their guard down before they could think through the implications. I looked at the dashboard clock. 10:47 a.m. I had about 6 hours before Linda's automated sweep tried to raid my workstation for intellectual property, but she'd made a fundamental miscalculation. She assumed I kept the Phantom Grid source code on my work laptop like some amateur weekend coder. She thought I was sloppy with my digital security. I started the engine and pulled out of the TechFlow parking lot for what I knew would be the last time. I wasn't just leaving a job, I was initiating a war. And the perfectly groomed executive in the white suit had no idea she'd just fired a missile at a mosquito and hit a nuclear reactor instead. I didn't drive home to my empty apartment where I'd been living since the divorce. Home was for licking wounds and feeling sorry for yourself, and I wasn't wounded. I was calibrated. Instead, I drove straight downtown to the law offices of Brennan and Associates, a boutique firm that specialized in intellectual property litigation. Susan Trent wasn't your typical corporate lawyer. She was a precision instrument that companies like TechFlow didn't know existed until it was too late. We'd met 5 years ago at a Seattle tech workers meetup where she'd given a presentation on protecting personal IP in the age of aggressive corporate consolidation. She'd brilliantly deconstructed the employment contracts of 3 major tech companies, showing exactly how they'd written loopholes to steal employee innovations. I'd kept her business card ever since, tucked behind my driver's license like insurance. Today felt like the right time to file a claim. "You're early for someone who just quit their job," Susan said as I walked into her office. The room smelled like leather-bound law books and expensive coffee. She didn't look up from the case file she was reviewing. "And you look like a man who's about to make someone's life very complicated." I sat down and slid an envelope across her mahogany desk. Linda Reiser just announced total intellectual property consolidation at TechFlow. She's claiming retroactive ownership of everything their employees have ever built, regardless of time, location, or resources used. She's planning to sweep our hard drives at 5 p.m. today. Susan opened the envelope and pulled out the documents. My patent filing for the Phantom Grid Network Infrastructure Monitoring System, officially filed with the USPTO 8 months ago, complete with priority timestamps, technical specifications, and a filing fee receipt that proved I'd paid for it with my personal credit card. A slow, predatory smile spread across Susan's face as she read. "This is beautiful work, Howard. You filed this under your personal LLC? Pierce Technology Solutions. Incorporated in Delaware, completely separate from TechFlow. No company resources used. No company time claimed. I have server logs from my home network to prove every line of code was written on my personal equipment." "Then Ms. Reiser just walked into a federal bear trap," Susan said, leaning back in her chair. "But here's the strategic problem we're facing. If she takes your code and presents it at the Infrastructure Summit as TechFlow's innovation breakthrough, she gains significant market momentum. We need to stop her before she gets the product to market and starts generating revenue from your intellectual property. She's targeting the summit in 3 weeks," I confirmed. "It's her make-or-break moment. She needs a major technical win to justify her position and save her quarterly numbers. She's going to present my monitoring system as the crown jewel of her innovation era." Susan tapped her Mont Blanc pen against the legal pad where she'd been taking notes. "Here's what we're going to do. We don't just file a lawsuit and wait for the courts to grind through the process. We investigate Linda Reiser's professional history. If she's this brazen about intellectual property theft, this isn't her first time at the rodeo. Corporate executives don't wake up one morning and decide to violate federal IP statutes on a whim. This kind of systematic theft represents a pattern of behavior. What do you need from me? Go home, stay completely offline. Do not log into any TechFlow systems under any circumstances. Don't answer emails, don't respond to phone calls from management, don't even think about checking your work voicemail. Let Linda think she's won this round. Let her believe you're just another burnt-out engineer who took his toys and went home." She stood up and walked to her window, looking out at the Seattle skyline where TechFlow's headquarters gleamed in the distance. "Silence makes people like Linda nervous," Susan continued. "When predators can't see their prey, they start making mistakes to flush them out. She's going to overreach, and when she does, we'll be ready to document every federal law she violates." I stood to leave, but Susan held up a hand. "One more thing, Howard. I'm going to need you to think very carefully about Linda's background. Where did she come from? What happened to her previous employers? Corporate vampires like this don't just appear fully formed. They leave a trail of bodies behind them." I walked back to my car with Susan's words echoing in my mind. Linda had mentioned Vanguard systems in passing during her introduction meetings, but I'd never bothered to research what happened there. Time to do some homework. I spent the next 2 days doing the deepest background research of my life. What I found in the digital archives made my blood run cold. Linda Reiser had left Vanguard Systems 9 months ago under what the press releases called mutual agreement to pursue new opportunities. But buried in engineering forums and LinkedIn complaints, I found a different story. A user called Code Warrior 88 described an almost identical scenario: sudden IP consolidation demands, a spectacular product launch that failed catastrophically 6 months later due to unresolvable architecture issues, and Linda's convenient exit with a golden parachute just before the stock price collapsed. She was a corporate vampire. She fed on engineering talent, drained innovation to artificially pump quarterly numbers, then disappeared before the inevitable technical failures destroyed the company's reputation. I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. This wasn't just about my code anymore. This was about Dennis, Patricia, and every engineer who'd ever worked until 3 a.m. debugging a critical system only to watch someone like Linda sell their exhaustion as synergy. 3 days after my conversation with Susan, the silence was broken by my doorbell. A courier handed me a thick legal envelope with TechFlow's logo embossed on the front. Formal demand letter. Dear Mr. Pierce, it has come to our attention that you have retained possession of proprietary company data, specifically development files related to the Enterprise Infrastructure Monitoring Project. You are hereby ordered to return all materials immediately or face legal action for trade secret misappropriation. I actually laughed out loud. Linda was officially accusing me of stealing my own invention. I called Susan immediately. She took the bait, Susan said, sounding absolutely delighted. She's publicly acknowledging the project exists and claiming ownership. Now we hit back hard. She's calling it Enterprise Infrastructure Monitoring in the letter. Generic corporate naming. But wait until you see the press release she just dropped. Check your email. I opened my inbox and found the Google alert I'd set up for TechFlow News. Press release. TechFlow Solutions to unveil Project Phoenix at Infrastructure Summit. Revolutionary AI-driven network monitoring solution. I clicked the link. The article was filled with quotes from Linda. Phoenix represents a fundamental paradigm shift in how enterprises approach system reliability. It anticipates problems before they manifest, creating unprecedented operational efficiency. She was using my exact words. Verbatim quotes from the technical white paper I'd written 8 months ago, probably retrieved from some forgotten email thread or shared drive. She's fully committed now, I told Susan. Public announcement, summit presentation scheduled, the whole corporate theater production. Perfect. I'm sending the cease and desist notification now. And Howard? I'm attaching your complete patent filing documentation. Let's see how she enjoys reading federal priority dates. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Not HR, not corporate legal. Linda Reiser herself, calling from her personal cell phone. Susan had prepared me for this moment. Answer it, record everything, say as little as possible. Let her dig her own grave. I swiped green and activated my phone's voice recording function. Howard. Linda's voice was tight, her usual corporate polish cracking around the edges like old paint. I'm looking at a very confusing legal document from Susan Trent. I assume this is some kind of misunderstanding that we can resolve professionally. No misunderstanding, Linda, I said, keeping my voice calm and level. You announced a product based on the Phantom Grid system. That system is my intellectual property, properly filed and legally protected. Phantom Grid? She forced a laugh that sounded more like barking. Howard, be realistic here. You developed that code while employed by TechFlow. It belongs to the company. Our employee handbook makes this very clear. The handbook applies to work performed on company time using company resources. I corrected her patiently. I have server logs proving every line of code was written on my personal equipment, off our network, outside business hours. And I have USPTO timestamps that predate your employment here by an entire year. Dead silence on the line. I could hear her breathing. Sharp, calculating, desperate. Look, she said, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. I understand your position. You feel undervalued, unrecognized for your contributions. We can work this out, Howard. Come back to the team. Senior principal architect position, substantial salary increase, equity package. But you have to drop this legal nonsense immediately. You cannot stop Project Phoenix. It's already in motion. Phoenix is heading straight into a mountain, I replied, because you don't have the source code. You have compiled binaries I left on our development servers. You can execute the program, but you can't modify it, scale it, or repair it when it inevitably breaks. We have a team of 50 engineers, she snapped, her corporate mask finally slipping completely. We'll reverse engineer your precious code in a week. You think you're irreplaceable. You're just a programmer, Howard. I'm the vision. I'm the one who brings products to market and generates revenue. And without my code, I said quietly, Your vision is a corporate hallucination." "You listen to me very carefully," Linda hissed into the phone. "If you continue this path, I will personally destroy you. I'll ensure you never work in this industry again. I'll sue you into bankruptcy and ruin your professional reputation permanently. Who do you think investors and board members will believe? The VP of Innovation, with a track record of successful launches, or some bitter middle-aged programmer having a midlife crisis?" The insult didn't sting. It clarified everything. Linda was genuinely terrified. "I guess we'll find out," I said calmly. "See you in court, Linda." I hung up and immediately sent the audio file to Susan. The infrastructure summit was held in a massive Seattle convention center that smelled like new carpet and aggressive networking. I arrived 20 minutes before Linda's keynote presentation, wearing the navy suit I'd bought specifically for this moment. Linda took the stage to thundering corporate music, looking absolutely flawless in her signature white power suit. She radiated complete confidence as she launched into her presentation, a word-for-word theft of my original technical specifications. "But enough theory," Linda announced with her predatory smile. "Let's see Phoenix in live action." The massive screen behind her displayed a beautiful real-time dashboard showing network traffic, server loads, and system health metrics. Everything looked perfect, professional, completely convincing. "Watch what happens when I introduce a simulated failure," Linda said, tapping her presentation tablet. A red alert appeared on one server cluster. Instantly, traffic began rerouting seamlessly around the failure point. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause. It was flawless. It was also completely fraudulent. From my seat in the middle of the auditorium, I sent a single text message to Patricia. "Now." Up in the control booth, Patricia executed the plan we'd carefully coordinated. The beautiful dashboard suddenly froze. The real-time metrics stopped updating. Then the entire display shrank down, revealing the Windows desktop behind it. A media player window appeared in the center of the screen, file name clearly visible in 72-point font. Phoenix Demo Loop Final V3. 4. The applause died instantly. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd like a spreading infection. Linda stood frozen at the podium, frantically tapping her tablet. "We seem to have a minor display glitch," she stammered, her confidence evaporating. "The back-end systems are still processing normally." Then the pre-recorded audio kicked in. Linda's own voice, crystal clear through the auditorium speakers, completely drowning out her live microphone. "I don't care if the monitoring system actually works, Patricia. Just create a video that looks functional. We'll fake it through the summit and deal with technical problems afterward." The silence that followed was absolute. Heavy, suffocating, complete. I stood up. In the dead quiet, my voice carried clearly across the entire auditorium. "The technical problems are standing right here." Linda squinted desperately into the stage lights. When she finally spotted me, her knees actually buckled. She grabbed the podium for physical support. "Howard," she breathed into the hot microphone. "The system isn't working, Linda," I said, walking calmly toward the stage, "because Project Phoenix is a stolen, broken copy of the Phantom Grid system, and you can't demonstrate software that doesn't exist." "Security!" Linda shrieked, her composure shattering completely. "This man is a disgruntled former employee, corporate." "Sabotage. Actually, it's intellectual property enforcement," a new voice announced. Susan Trent walked out from the wings, flanked by 2 federal marshals. "Ms. Reiser, you are in willful violation of U.S. Patent 10,847,293. We also have documented evidence of securities fraud and attempted theft of trade secrets." The rest happened quickly. Linda's termination, the stock price collapse, the criminal investigation. But the real victory wasn't watching a corporate vampire finally face consequences. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my corner office at Apex Infrastructure Solutions, TechFlow's biggest competitor. The Phantom Grid system is now the industry standard for predictive network monitoring. Dennis and Patricia lead my development team. We've prevented millions in downtime across dozens of enterprise clients. Linda Reiser taught me something invaluable about the nature of power in corporate America. Real power isn't about titles or politics, or who can shout the loudest in meetings. Real power comes from building something so fundamentally solid, so technically superior, that it can't be faked, stolen, or destroyed by people who mistake ambition for competence. When someone tries to steal your life's work, the most elegant response isn't destruction. It's making their theft into their own trap.